Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest chapter of Ars Magica, taken from the subreddit H.5. All the relevant links are down below, and please like, comment, and subscribe like any good minion of the algorithm would do. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. I would just like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Fallen Angel, Buzz Kennington, Data Magnet, and Bob the Dragon. Thank you again. And now, on to the story. Chapter 5. Judicia was having a rough day. She supposed that it had started like any other day. She woke up, did paperwork, wished her subordinates well, talked to the priests, and then she had a nice tea time with an acquaintance. All in all, it was gearing up to be an okay day. Then someone just had to bust the door open to her room, and she just got it put back up too. Judicia, something's terrible has happened. She leaned her head and looked at the guy who dared to disturb her tea time. It was Marank. Of course it was fricking Marank. Why wouldn't it be? He's the only one who ever came to her with trouble, with his tail between his legs. Yes, what is it, Marank? She could faintly hear Marank's tail softly thumping against the floor. Someone's destroyed some of my apostles. In the back of Judicia's mind, she had thought that this seemed like a perfectly fine thing to happen. Marank was a patron of monsters after all, so it was common to have this happen to him. It also wasn't really that difficult to see why he'd be upset, however, because apostles are terribly expensive to get within the Panopticon. But again, every time anything of his got destroyed, he always came running to her to fix it, even if the problem was something like old age. Marank, I know that apostles are expensive. I know that they're gone now. But just because I was the creator of the Panopticon, it doesn't mean that I can... But Judicia, it was a joint effort between me and Hermant. Now, this raised Judicia's eyebrows. Joint efforts between gods were quite uncommon. So, it must have been a relatively new creation that they wanted to try out. This would have likely been a great opportunity for others to sabotage that relationship. She needed details, for gossip, of course. Okay, I want you to calm down, explain what happened step by step. Alright, so I made these little babies, not more than a couple thousand years ago, right? I thought that if I made them apostles of both me and Hermit, we'd get double the points we'd usually get for their lifetimes. I'm with you so far. But you know how I am. I want my little babies to shine in the brightest when they're in their prime. So I wanted them to hide in a cave for a while, build up their strength before taking on the nearest city of Vend. So far, it seemed reasonable. Vend was the opposite of Marank, so it made sense that he'd try and start a war again. Plus, she had heard that Vend had recently got an order of Hermans killed. So it makes sense to collaborate with Vend's opposite for revenge. So it'd been about 100 years since they spawned from their parents, and I thought I'd given them a little treat, you know. I maneuvered some strings here and there, and got some little beasties that had a pack in there that were a higher status than the bugs, insects, and rodents that were used to. I thought that they'd be ready for that. Let me guess. They weren't. As usual, no. They weren't able to take down one. Did they get cornered by the rest of them? No. It was a loner that recently got exiled. So what's the freaking problem, Marank? I don't see anything here worth giving a crap about. Well, I think there's a new god that made something down there. That made Judicia skeptical. Usually, gods had big open celebrations regarding their births, as the Panopticon was always able to tell when a new god would appear. For a new god, one who was just born to have started something new in the mortal realm was highly suspect. Doubly so, considering that making a new creation right next to another's was in poor manners. Where's your evidence for this? Here, I'll show you. With that, he pressed some buttons on his link, and a window was sent to Judicia. What Judicia saw made her heart stop, if she had one to begin with. There, doing battle against those weird tentacle things, was a new creature. She knew this when she looked up the identification. It had no listing within the Panopticon. That shouldn't have been possible. Everything was processed through it, even gods. Her judges made sure to, and then she remembered an incident from 2 days ago. One of her judges had been killed by a sapient soul that was being reassigned based on its past life choices. It was rare for a judge to be killed, unless it was by her will, as competition and threats of divine punishment usually saw fit to have them elevate onto a physical presence worth talking to. This one was on the cusp of that, which was what made her so upset. She only had at most 23 judges, and she was hoping for that 24th to come in so that she wouldn't have to work for 30 minutes of the day, and then she could spend that time on more important matters. She had even designated the name of the 24th positional title. So, seeing the new creature that she had assumed was the cause of her judge's demise, she was reacting in anger. She designated the killer a sinner and reduced the sinner's luck by 50. But with that, her anger was quenched. Usually, that sort of designation got creatures killed within 1 minute of being brought back to life, often by its parents. Then they saw its status, wanting it dead before they were also cursed with the title. The sinner would probably spend 100 lifetimes having its soul torn apart and being put back together and reborn to start all over again. At the end of it all, she'd wipe its memories and then send it back down with a clean slate. That wasn't the normal penalty for a sinner's title, considering a sinner usually had a specific god that it angered, and those gods would typically include a descriptor of who the creature had sinned against. In that case, the sinner could just go to another god and absolve their sins, ones that saw their actions in a just light usually. This punishment that she wanted to give out to the sinner was considered special as the crimes it committed were severe enough to warrant it. It wasn't an attack on her, but of the Panopticon as a whole workings. Judges were meant to be neutral presence within the Panopticon, and they usually dealt with matters between gods. Those who killed her, if they were able to, were sentenced with crimes against law, order, and the very Panopticon itself. So she had the full right to do whatever she pleased with the pitiable existence. She had been expecting its presence any time now. She had sent one of her judges, Absinthe, to track the soul's journey. She supposed, after 3 days, it probably had just a high amount of luck, probably around 50 before the deed, which was exceedingly rare, but still possible if they had jobs related to gambling or were priests of HIATUS. But even other gods had to respect her order, so usually she'd expect their class as a priest or follower of HIATUS to be revoked, and its bonuses along with it. However, something seemed off with the situation. She hadn't really looked at the creature before. It almost seemed something like a Vagnan, but it was a little bit taller and a little less bulky. It also seemed to have a 5th finger, which was odd, as that was a trait of the Krang, which were noticeably taller with sharper heads. Whatever this was, it was new. New usually meant that it was either a freshly created idea from a god that had privileges to make creatures, or that whatever it was a newborn, and newborns always spelled trouble. Don't worry, Marank, I know what this is. I'll deal with it personally, and offer a refund for it out of my own pocket. Looks like you spent a lot with how naturally they floated too. Marank looked a little surprised at this, because usually his schemes didn't work. He made a note to remember this exact situation to try out later, probably in a few centuries. Thank you, Judicia. I always knew I could count on you. Yeah, stop smiling, will you? Those teeth don't do anything for your face. And with that, he left through the open doorway, leaving her alone. Well, except for the person that she was having tea with. Was that important, Judicia? Nothing to concern yourself over, Jirok. I just need to take care of some more paperwork that's found its way onto my desk. No problem. I was kind of sick of drinking tea anyway. Wanted to go back out and command my legion. Yes, hope global conquest goes great for you, Jirok. And I hope your faith survives at Judicia. And with a smile, Jirok vanished elsewhere to control his battle priests. With that, Judicia translocated to the main hub and walked to the opposite end, where she felt her. If she was right about her suspicions, she had a certain Darryl, god of banners and chocolate, to talk to. Oh, how she despised him. Certainly, the being was opposite her sphere of influence, and that wasn't the only reason she absolutely despised him. The reason that no one really talks to Dalvina, goddess of wicker furniture at Rome, is because besides their very existence within the conversation, all passing phrase was subject to its whims. No one could find him without the aid of Judicia. As her opposite, Judicia could always tell where Benj was. However, it was to be understood that there are rules to how gods act. Their sphere of influence is as much an influence on them as it is to their surroundings. Whether or not that Grendel, being of sandpaper and sandstone, is actively doing these kinds of things is always up for debate. But there is one thing that is known about the Sacrusis' plans. He actively enjoys throwing sinks in other gods' plans. Beside him, there was only one other person that Judicia suspected, but she was pretty sure it was fairly impossible for it to happen. Fuentes hadn't made any other Max-like beings since Jucros, and they had already limited that from happening again through further modifications to the Panopticon, and had gotten rid of any mentions of those accursed beings. The only way that they were able to even be killed was to completely encapsulate them in a zone of enhanced pleasure. Thankfully, the Panopticon had viewed that as a lucky happenstance, so it happened for all of the Jucros, otherwise who knows what would have happened. Be that as it may, a newcomer was highly screened before converting the soul to a compatible form. For there not to be one in the Panopticon could only mean that the Shickle was involved, somehow. There appeared to be no other option, and as she fell up the stairs and through the halls of gravy and marmalade, she wondered why she had to put up restrictions to teleport directly into another god. She knew it was for a good reason, but at that moment, the sheer insanity of having to trudge through a maple syrup swamps made her question her decisions momentarily, and for that, she shuddered. No other god could make her question herself much like Clem, or have thoughts that weren't herself. Finally, she arrived in the throne room. It was the one place every god was required to have, and would let her instantly talk to Sheldon, even if he was visiting someone else in the upper reaches. So, what brings you to my domain, Mishfief? There, standing on the wall, was an enigmatic being itself. Judicia may not have recognized his new form, but she could still feel that he was her. There's a creature that I believe you've tampered with. Oh, I have no idea what you mean. The last time I was allowed to even create something was back when I created the Mimic, and even then it stands as the worst creation I've ever made. And with that, he smiled, showing piano teeth. By the way, I've gotten into interior decorating. What do you think of the constellation on the ceiling? That's not a constellation, that's a bunch of water. No, my dear, not just water. Tears! With that, she fell through the wall, laughing, reappearing on the throne. Ah, yeah. So why are you questioning me? I know you hate me. This, thing isn't listed within the design registry of the Panopticon. Leads me to believe he's a newcomer. Ah, that's delectable. Tell me, how does he taste? Bipedal, mammal, and for some reason, really good at resisting mind effects. So, a boring one, I take it. To you, most everything you don't make is boring unless it's working for you. Touching, but still the curve stands. Just from what I can understand as well, the center title is not having an effect on the creature, or if it is, the effect has been reduced drastically. Somehow, at this, Vendeg raised his legs in surprise and belted out a chorus of cutlery. Oh, sorry about that, my dear. Butterfingers, you know. Emotions are such fickle things, you understand. Judicia sighed as she pulled a spoon from her ear. Yes, I think, it's hard remembering the rules for your speech when you're constantly changed them. And that is why you'll never understand me and my parents. Just give me a straight answer, yes or no. Did you, in any way, cause the newcomer to come into existence? No, I don't remember any of that happening. Alright, that means that there's been a breach in the barrier or something. I really don't want to talk to Daryl though. Daryl is somewhat important and an interesting man, and he tries Judicia. You say that cause he is infuriating to most of us with his boring way of talking. Monotone is in this moment, you know. I really wish that god of boundaries and containment would just, be a bit better to talk to. If you really want that, you know what you'd have to give me, right? Judicia shuddered at the touch of her custard. She knew what he probably wanted. Even if he had signed the law into being along with all the other gods, Cheer's-based instincts couldn't be ignored. She may have not remembered the time from before it was born, but she does know that it reigned supreme for a millennium as the most powerful of the gods. The only thing keeping it from destroying anyone's hard work was the Panopticon. Even if I wanted you to change his speech pattern, you'd probably just change it to the sound of pears on stones, all squelch and no substance. Even then, Bryce isn't worth it. O'Shea, well, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you again. Come visit again sometime. Bye. With a wave of his hand, Judicia was sent away back to her sphere. With that removal of simplicity, Chaos could come and call. God of Chaos and Change could finally let himself relax. Now that no one was watching him, he could think straight once again. Sure, he didn't exactly know how long he had to do so, but it was always fun to switch from time-based thinking to insanity. Cole was always having a good day, no matter if his plans fell apart or not, for a failed plan was as successful as a successful one. Sure, he may not have had all the information right now, but at least he had a view of something new, something exciting, something that apparently no one had created. It had been a while since that happened. Plus, his peculiar connection to the Panopticon allowed for all sorts of fun. He had plans upon plans concocting within his mind, and very soon his penultimate plan would come to fruition. Thus, for the rest of the day, Judicia was distracted by her investigation by the sound of a cackling laughter that only she could hear. End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.